In the land of India, in the year 1592, the world was a very different place. This was an age of kings and queens, an age of palaces made of marble and gardens filled with roses, an age when poets wrote verses about love and warriors fought battles for honor. The greatest empire in all of India was the Mughal Empire. The Mughals were not originally from India. They came from Central Asia. Their ancestors were the mighty Mongols and Turks who had once conquered half the world. But the Mughals had made India their home. They had built magnificent cities, created beautiful art, and ruled over millions of people with power and wisdom. The greatest of all Mughal emperors was Akbar. Emperor Akbar was a man of extraordinary vision. He believed that all religions taught the same truth. He brought Hindus and Muslims together. He married Rajput princesses. He invited scholars from every faith to debate in his court. He built a capital city called Fatehpur Sikri that was a masterpiece of architecture. Under Akbar, the Mughal Empire became not just powerful, but also cultured, tolerant, and civilized. Akbar had a son named Salim. When Akbar died in 1605, Salim became the emperor and took the title Jahangir, which means conqueror of the world. Jahangir was different from his father. He was artistic and refined. He loved painting, nature, and beauty. He kept a detailed diary where he wrote about flowers, birds, and the changing seasons. He also loved wine and luxury. Jahangir had many wives, as was the custom for Mughal emperors. One of his important wives was Jagat Gosini. She was a Rajput princess, strong, beautiful, and noble. On January 5th, 1592, in the city of Lahore, Jagat Gosini gave birth to a baby boy. The baby was healthy and beautiful. His grandfather Akbar was overjoyed. He named the baby Khurram, which in Persian means joyful. Little Prince Khurram was raised in the golden halls of the Mughal palaces. From the day he was born, he was surrounded by beauty. The walls around him were decorated with precious stones. The gardens were filled with fountains and flowers. Musicians played in the courtyards. Poets recited verses in the halls. As young Khurram grew, he showed remarkable intelligence. He learned to read and write in Persian, Arabic, and Turkish. He studied history, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. He was trained in the arts of war, sword fighting, archery, horse riding, and military strategy. But what made Khurram truly special was his eye for beauty. Even as a child, he noticed things others did not see. He noticed how light fell on marble. He noticed the patterns of tiles on walls. He noticed the curves of arches and the designs of gardens. He loved beauty in all its forms. His grandfather Akbar loved him dearly. Akbar would spend hours with little Khurram, teaching him about ruling an empire, about justice, about treating all people with fairness. But in 1605, when Khurram was just 13 years old, his beloved grandfather Akbar died. His father Jahangir became the emperor, and young Khurram's life was about to change in a way no one could have predicted. The year was 1607. Prince Khurram was now 15 years old. He had grown into a handsome young man. He was tall and strong. His eyes were bright with intelligence. He carried himself with the confidence of a prince who knew that one day he might rule an empire. It was spring in Agra. The air was warm and sweet. The city was celebrating. The royal court had organized a special event called the Meena Bazaar. The Meena Bazaar was not an ordinary market. It was a private market set up inside the palace grounds, only for the royal family and the noble families of the court. In this special bazaar, the ladies of noble families would set up stalls and pretend to be shopkeepers. They would sell beautiful things, silk fabrics, jewelry, perfumes, glass beads, and embroidered shawls. It was a way for the women of the palace, who normally lived in strict purdah, to come out, socialize, and have fun. The men of the royal family could also attend, and it was one of the rare occasions when young nobles could see and perhaps meet young women from other noble families. On this particular evening, Prince Karam decided to visit the Meena Bazaar. He walked through the decorated pathways with his attendants. Everywhere he looked, there were colorful stalls. The air was filled with laughter and music. Ladies in beautiful clothes were selling their wares. Lanterns hung from the trees, casting a warm glow over everything. Prince Karam walked slowly, looking at the different stalls. Nothing particularly caught his attention. He was about to leave when something made him stop. At one of the stalls sat a young girl. She could not have been more than 14 years old. She was selling silk cloth and glass beads. She was arranging her items carefully, completely absorbed in her work. And in that moment, Prince Karam's world stopped. The girl was beautiful, but it was not just her beauty that struck him. There was something else. Something in the way she moved, something in the grace of her gestures, something in a gentle expression on her face. She had an inner light that seemed to radiate outward. Her name was Arjumand Banu Begum. She was the daughter of Abdul Hassan Asaf Khan, an important Persian nobleman in Emperor Jahangir's court. Her grandfather was Mirza Ghiyas Beg, who held the powerful position of Itimaru Naula, the chief minister of the empire. Arjumand came from a distinguished family, but she was not just a pretty face from a noble family. She was intelligent, educated, and cultured. She had been taught to read and write. She knew Persian poetry. She understood politics and court affairs. As Prince Karam stood there, unable to move, Arjumand looked up. Their eyes met. And in that single moment, something extraordinary happened, something that poets write about, something that people dream about, something that happens perhaps once in a lifetime, if at all. Prince Karam felt completely, deeply, and irrevocably in love. He felt as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet. His heart was beating so loudly he could hear it in his ears. Everything around him, the noise of the bazaar, the other people, the music, all of it, fading into the background. He could see only her. The story goes that Prince Karam approached her stall. With trembling hands, he picked up a small piece of glass. His voice was barely steady as he asked the price. Arjumand, perhaps sensing something special in this moment, perhaps playing along with the romantic atmosphere of the bazaar, quoted an absurdly high price, 10,000 rupees. For context, 10,000 rupees was an enormous sum of money in those days. It was enough to buy a house or several horses or support a family for years. It was obviously not the real price of a piece of glass. But Prince Karam did not hesitate. He did not laugh. He did not bargain. He simply paid it because he was not buying glass. He was buying a moment with her, a moment he would remember for the rest of his life. Some versions of the story say they spoke briefly. Some say they only looked at each other. Some say that in those few minutes, they both knew that their destinies were now intertwined. What we know for certain is this. Prince Karam left the Meena Bazaar a changed man. He returned to his chambers, but he could not sleep. He could not eat. He could not think of anything else except the girl with the gentle eyes and the radiant smile. Her face was imprinted on his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Every breath he took, he thought of her. This was not a passing infatuation. This was not the idle fancy of a young prince who had too much time and too much privilege. This was something else entirely. This was love. Real love. the kind of love that changes everything. Prince Khurram knew immediately what he had to do. He went to his father, Emperor Jahangir, and told him everything. He did not hide his feelings. He did not play political games. He spoke from his heart. "Father," he said, "I have met the woman I want to marry. Her name is Arjamand Banu Begum. She is the daughter of Abdul Hassan Asaf Khan. I cannot imagine spending my life with anyone else." Emperor Jahangir looked at his son. He saw the intensity in Khurram's eyes. He heard the conviction in his voice. Jahangir himself was a man who appreciated beauty and understood passion. He could see that this was serious. Jahangir knew Arjumand's family well. Abdul Hassan Asaf Khan was one of his most trusted nobles. The family was Persian, cultured, and powerful. It was a good match politically, but more importantly, Jahangir could see that his son was truly in love. "I will consult the astrologers," Jahangir said. In the Mughal court, important decisions were not made hastily. The royal astrologers were consulted for all major events: births, marriages, coronations, military campaigns. These astrologers studied the positions of the stars and planets. They performed complex calculations. They consulted ancient texts. The astrologers studied the birth charts of Prince Khurram and Arjamand Banu Begum. They looked at the positions of the stars on the day they met. They calculated auspicious and inauspicious periods. After many days of study, they returned with their verdict. The marriage was blessed by the stars. The match was favorable. The couple would have a good life together. But there was one condition. The most auspicious date for the wedding was 5 years away. 5 years. For a 15-year-old boy burning with the fire of first love, 5 years must have felt like an eternity. 5 years felt like forever. But Prince Khurram had no choice. In the Mughal court, one did not go against the advice of the astrologers. And if 5 years was what it took to marry the woman he loved, then he would wait 5 years. And so began the longest wait of Prince Khurram's young life. During these 5 years, he thought of Arjamand constantly. She was the first thought when he woke up and the last thought before he slept. She was in his dreams. She was in his prayers. She was in every breath he took. The two of them could not meet privately. Social customs did not allow it. Unmarried men and women from noble families could not spend time alone together. Everything was strictly chaperoned and controlled. But they found ways to communicate. They sent letters through trusted servants. They exchanged poetry. In the formal gatherings at court, they would see each other from a distance. A glance, a smile, a gesture. These small moments had to sustain them through the long years of waiting. Prince Khurram threw himself into his duties to distract himself from the waiting. He studied harder. He trained more intensely in warfare and leadership. His father, Jahangir, began giving him important responsibilities. In 1607, the same year he met Arjamand, Khurram was sent on a military campaign to deal with a rebellion in the Mewar region. Despite his young age, he showed remarkable military skill and courage. He successfully accomplished his mission and returned victorious. Jahangir was impressed. He began to see Khurram not just as his son, but as a capable leader who could one day rule the empire. In 1610, when Khurram was 18 years old, he was married to Kandahari Begum, a Persian princess. This was a political marriage arranged for diplomatic reasons with Persia. In the Mughal tradition, it was completely normal for princes to have multiple wives. Royal marriages were often political alliances. But this marriage meant nothing to Khurram's heart. It was a duty he performed because it was expected of him. His heart belonged to only one woman, Arjamand. Arjumand, during these 5 years of waiting, also thought of Khurram constantly. She was an intelligent young woman who understood the political realities of the Mughal court. She knew that Khurram might have other wives, but she also knew from their brief meeting, from his letters, from everything she heard about him, that he truly loved her, and she loved him in return. She waited patiently. She prepared herself for the day she would become his wife. She studied. She learned about court etiquette, about politics, about the responsibilities of a royal wife. She was not just preparing to be a wife. She was preparing to be a partner to a prince who might one day become an emperor. Finally, after 5 long years, the day arrived. The date was May 10th, 1612. The city of Agra was decorated like a bride. Every street was hung with flowers. Every building was draped with colored cloth. Musicians had been hired to play day and night. The entire city was celebrating. This was not just any wedding. This was the wedding of Prince Khurram, the favorite son of Emperor Jahangir, the prince who had proven himself on the battlefield, the prince who many saw as the future emperor. The wedding celebrations lasted for several weeks. There were feasts every day. Hundreds of guests arrived from all corners of the empire. Poets recited special verses composed for the occasion. Dancers performed. Musicians played. Elephants, draped in gold and silver, marched in processions. The royal treasury was opened. Gifts were distributed to the poor. Gold coins were thrown to the crowds. It was a celebration worthy of a future emperor. But for Prince Khurram, all the grandeur, all the spectacle, all the magnificence meant nothing compared to one simple fact. He was finally going to marry the woman he had loved for 5 years. On the wedding day, Arjumand Banu Begum was dressed in the finest clothes. She wore a beautiful lehenga made of silk and embroidered with gold thread. She wore jewelry made of diamonds, emeralds, and rubies. Her hands were decorated with henna. Her eyes were lined with kohl. But even with all these adornments, what made her truly beautiful was the glow of happiness on her face. After 5 years of waiting, she was finally going to marry the man she loved. The wedding ceremony was conducted according to Islamic tradition. The nikah, the marriage contract, was signed in the presence of witnesses. The bride and groom agreed to the marriage. Prayers were recited, blessings were given. And then Prince Khurram and Arjumand Banu Begum were married. After the wedding celebrations ended, Prince Khurram and Mumtaz Mahal began their life together, and it was a life filled with love, happiness, and partnership. The marriage of Prince Khurram and Mumtaz Mahal was extraordinary for its time, and would be extraordinary in any time. This was not a typical royal marriage of convenience. This was not a political arrangement where husband and wife barely saw each other. This was a true partnership of equals, built on deep love, mutual respect, and genuine companionship. Prince Khurram did something that was almost unheard of for a Mughal prince. He made Mumtaz Mahal his constant companion. Wherever he went, she went with him. Whatever he did, she was by his side. In the Mughal court, royal wives usually stayed in the harem, the women's quarters of the palace. They lived separate lives from their husbands. They had their own worlds, their own routines, their own pleasures. The emperor or prince would visit them, but the women did not participate in public life or government. But Mumtaz Mahal was different, and Prince Khurram was different. He did not keep her hidden away. He brought her into his life completely. He shared everything with her, his thoughts, his plans, his worries, his dreams. Mumtaz Mahal was intelligent and educated. She understood politics and governance. She had wisdom beyond her years, and Prince Khurram recognized this. He sought her advice on important matters. He discussed state affairs with her. He valued her judgment. She became his most trusted advisor, his closest confidant, his partner in every sense of the word. Historical records tell us that Prince Karam loved Mumtaz Mahal with a depth and exclusivity that was remarkable. Although he technically had another wife, Kandahani Begum, whom he had married for political reasons, the court historians recorded that he showed no interest in her or any other woman after marrying Mumtaz. The court chronicler Kazwini wrote, "The intimacy, deep affection, attention, and favor which His Majesty had for Mumtaz Mahal exceeded what he felt for his other wives." Another historian, Inayati Khan, wrote even more explicitly, "His whole delight was centered on this illustrious lady, to such an extent that he did not feel any inclination towards others." This was extraordinary. Mughal emperors typically had large harems with many wives and concubines, but Prince Karam, despite having every opportunity and every right to take more wives, devoted himself entirely to Mumtaz Mahal. She was enough for him. She was everything. The couple was inseparable. When Prince Karam went on military campaigns, and he went on many, Mumtaz Mahal traveled with him. This was highly unusual. Military campaigns were dangerous, uncomfortable, and difficult. The journey to battlefields often took months. The conditions were harsh. There were no comfortable palaces, only tents in the field. Most royal wives would have stayed behind in the safety and comfort of the palace, but not Mumtaz Mahal. She refused to be separated from her husband, and he could not bear to be away from her. Together, they traveled across the length and breadth of the Mughal Empire. They crossed deserts and mountains. They endured heat and cold. They braved storms and hardships. Through it all, they were together. Their love grew stronger with each passing year. They were not just husband and wife. They were best friends. They were partners. They were soulmates. And soon they became parents. Mumtaz Mahal had settled into the royal quarters in the Burhanpur fort. Despite the discomfort of the heat and the advanced pregnancy, she continued to perform her duties. She managed the household. She cared for her children who had come with them. She advised Shah Jahan on various matters. But her time was near, very near. On June 16, 1631, Mumtaz Mahal went into labor. At first, everything seemed normal. Mumtaz had given birth to 13 children before. She was experienced. The royal physicians and midwives were in attendance. Everyone expected a normal delivery. But as the hours passed, it became clear that something was wrong. The labor was difficult, much more difficult than it should have been. Mumtaz was in terrible pain. The birth was not progressing as it should. Hour after hour passed. The pain continued. The difficulties mounted. The physicians tried everything they knew, but nothing seemed to help. Shah Jahan was informed that the empress was in difficult labor. He immediately went to be near her chambers. He paced outside, anxious and worried. He sent his best physicians to help. He prayed. He waited. The night dragged on. The labor continued for nearly 30 hours, an agonizing eternity for both Mumtaz and those who cared for her. Finally, in the early morning hours of June 17, 1631, Mumtaz Mahal gave birth to a baby girl. The child was healthy and cried vigorously. They named her Gauhara Begum. But something was terribly wrong with Mumtaz. The birth had caused severe complications. She was bleeding heavily, too heavily. The physicians tried to stop the bleeding, but they couldn't. In the medical knowledge of that time, they had limited tools and treatments for such complications. Mumtaz was growing weaker by the minute. The color was draining from her face. Her strength was fading. She was dying, and everyone in the room knew it. Shah Jahan was summoned immediately. When he entered the room and saw the state of his beloved wife, he was overcome with horror and grief. He rushed to her side. He fell to his knees next to her bed. He took her hand in his. He begged her to hold on. He begged her to fight. He begged her not to leave him. Mumtaz looked at him with those gentle, loving eyes that had captivated him 24 years ago in the Meena Bazaar. She could see the terror and desperation in his face. She knew she was dying. She knew these were her final moments. With what little strength she had left, she spoke to him. Her voice was weak, but her words were clear. Different historical accounts give slightly different versions of her last words, but the essence was this. She asked him to take care of their children, to love them, protect them, and raise them well, to give special attention to their youngest daughter, Gauhara Begum, who would never know her mother. She asked him not to marry again after her death. She could not bear the thought of another woman taking her place in his heart. She wanted to remain his only true love, even after she was gone. She asked him to visit her grave regularly and remember her in his prayers. And then, the requests that would change the world, she asked him to build something beautiful over her grave, a monument that would be a symbol of their love. A monument so magnificent that people would remember their love story forever. Shah Jahan, tears streaming down his face, his heart breaking into pieces, he promised her everything. He promised with his whole soul, "I will do everything you ask. I will build you a monument so beautiful that the world has never seen anything like it. I will build you a monument that will make our love immortal." Mumtaz smiled weakly, a small, gentle smile. She squeezed his hand. "I love you," she whispered. And those were her last words. And then Mumtaz Mahal closed her eyes, and she was gone. The woman who had been Shah Jahan's companion for 19 years, who had borne him 14 children, who had stood by him through exile and triumph, who had been his advisor, his best friend, his everything, was dead. She was only 38 years old. It was June 17, 1631, a date that would haunt Shah Jahan for the rest of his life. The effect of Mumtaz Mahal's death on Shah Jahan was catastrophic. The great emperor of the Mughal Empire, the king of the world, a man who commanded millions of subjects and controlled unimaginable wealth and power, completely collapsed. When Mumtaz breathed her last, Shah Jahan let out a cry of anguish so terrible that everyone in the palace heard it. It was a cry of pure, unbearable pain, the cry of a man whose entire world had just been destroyed. He refused to leave her side. He sat next to her body for hours, holding her hand, talking to her as if she could still hear him, refusing to accept that she was gone. Finally, his attendants gently convinced him to leave the room so that Mumtaz's body could be prepared for burial according to Islamic custom. Shah Jahan went to his chambers and locked the door. He refused to come out. He refused to eat. He refused to drink. He refused to see anyone. For days, he did nothing but weep. The court historian Abdul Hamid Lahori, who witnessed these events, recorded them in vivid and heartbreaking detail. His grief was so deep that it seemed as if his soul would leave his body. He wept so much that it was feared he would lose his eyesight. His hair, which had been black, turned gray in a matter of days. His face became lined and aged. His back, which had been straight and proud, became bent. Shah Jahan stopped wearing his royal clothes and jewels. He dressed in simple, white garments, the color of mourning in the Mughal tradition. He stopped listening to music, which he had always loved. He stopped attending celebrations. He stopped eating rich foods. He ate only the simplest meals, plain bread and lentils. For an entire week, the emperor did not appear in court. The business of the empire came to a halt. His ministers and generals were deeply worried. The empire needed its emperor. There were urgent matters to attend to, but Shah Jahan was lost in a darkness so deep that nothing could reach him. When he finally emerged after a week, everyone was shocked by his appearance. The vigorous, handsome emperor who had left Agra in March had become an old, broken man in just a few months. He looked as if he had aged 20 years. Some historical accounts say that Shah Jahan was in a state of deep depression for 2 full years after Mumtaz's death. He continued to perform his duties as emperor because he had to, but mechanically, without joy, without passion. The spark that had always animated him, the love of beauty, the joy in creation, the excitement of living, was gone. Mumtaz had been that spark. Without her, everything was gray and empty. But even in his darkest grief, Shah Jahan remembered his promise. He remembered Mumtaz's last request. He remembered that she had asked him to build her a monument. And so, through his tears, through his pain, through his shattered heart, Shah Jahan began to plan. He would build her a monument. Not just any monument, the most beautiful monument the world had ever seen. A monument worthy of the women he loved more than life itself. A monument that would tell their love story for all eternity. He would build the Taj Mahal. Mumtaz Mahal's body was initially buried in Burhanpur, in a garden called Zainabad on the banks of the Tapti River. It was a temporary burial, conducted with full royal honors and Islamic funeral rites. But Shah Jahan knew this was not where she would rest forever. He wanted her final resting place to be in Agra, the heart of the Mughal Empire, the city where their love story had begun in the Meena Bazaar 24 years earlier. 6 months after her death, in December 1631, Mumtaz Mahal's body was exhumed from the temporary grave in Burhanpur. It was placed in a golden casket and transported to Agra in a grand funeral procession. The procession was led by Prince Shah Shuja and a trusted nobleman named Wasir Khan. The journey from Burhanpur to Agra took several weeks. Along the entire route, people came out to pay their respects to the beloved empress. They lined the roads with flowers. They wept. They prayed. Mumtaz Mahal had been known for her kindness and charity, and the common people mourned her death genuinely. When the procession reached Agra, the entire city was draped in mourning. Shah Jahan had already selected the site for Mumtaz's final resting place. It was a large plot of land in the southern bank of the Yamuna River. The location was perfect, visible from the Agra fort across the river, peaceful and beautiful, with a view of the water and the sky. The land had belonged to Raja Jai Singh, a Rajput nobleman. Shah Jahan acquired it in exchange for a magnificent palace in the center of Agra. It was a generous exchange. The palace given to Raja Jai Singh was worth far more than the land. But Shah Jahan didn't care about the cost. He wanted the perfect location for his beloved. Mumtaz Mahal's body was laid to rest in a temporary grave on this site while the great monument was being planned and built. And now began one of the most extraordinary construction projects in human history. Shah Jahan summoned the finest architects, designers, engineers, and craftsmen from across the Mughal Empire and beyond. Messengers were sent to Persia, Turkey, Central Asia, and even Europe, inviting master builders and artisans to come and contribute to this project. Who exactly designed the Taj Mahal? This question has been debated by historians for centuries. The most commonly credited architect is Ustad Ahmad Lahori, a brilliant Persian architect who was believed to have been the principal designer. But the truth is that the Taj Mahal was a collaborative effort. Many master builders, engineers, and artists contributed their ideas and skills. And overseeing everything was Shah Jahan himself. This was his vision, his dream, his promise to Mumtaz. He was deeply involved in every aspect of the design. He reviewed every plan, approved every material, made changes and suggestions. He demanded absolute perfection. Nothing less than perfection would do for his Mumtaz. The design that emerged was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It combined elements from Persian architecture, Islamic design traditions, Indian craftsmanship, and even some influences from European architectural ideas. But it was more than just the combination of styles. It was something entirely new, something that transcended any single culture or tradition, something universal. The monument would be built primarily of white marble, the finest white marble from the quarries of Makrana in Rajasthan. This marble was famous for its purity and its ability to change color with the light. In the morning, it would appear pink. During the day, it would be brilliant white. In the evening, it would turn golden. And under the moonlight, it would glow with an ethereal, otherworldly luminescence. The design featured a massive central dome, flanked by 4 smaller domes. At the 4 corners of the platform, 4 tall minarets would stand as elegant sentinels. The entire structure would be set in a magnificent garden designed in the classical Mughal Chattabog style, a garden divided into 4 equal sections by water channels, representing the 4 gardens of paradise. Inside, the walls would be decorated with exquisite payat-fordura work, the art of inlaying precious and semi-precious stones into marble to create intricate floral patterns. Verses from the Quran would be carved in beautiful calligraphy. Every surface would be a masterpiece. The estimated cost was staggering, 32 million rupees in 17th century currency. In today's terms, this would be worth hundreds of millions and perhaps billions of dollars. But Shah Jahan didn't hesitate. No expense was too great, no effort was too much. This was for Mumtaz, his beloved, the woman who had been his everything. Construction began in 1632, approximately 1 year after Mumtaz's death. More than 20,000 workers were employed in the construction of the Taj Mahal. They came from all across the Mughal Empire and from foreign lands. Master craftsmen from Persia, Turkey, Central Asia, France, Italy, and India, the greatest artisans of the age, all contributed to this monumental project. The logistics were extraordinary. The white Makrana marble had to be transported from Rajasthan, over 300 kilometers away. In an age before trucks and railways, this meant using enormous caravans of oxen, elephants, and human labor. Some marble blocks weighed several tons. They had to be transported across rivers, through forests, over rough terrain. 1,000 elephants were used to transport materials. The precious and semi-precious stones used for the inlay work came from even farther away. Lapis lazuli came from Afghanistan. Turquoise came from Tibet and Persia. Jade came from China. Sapphires came from Sri Lanka. Carnelian came from Arabia. Diamonds came from the mines of central India. Coral came from the Arabian Sea. Mother of pearl came from the Indian Ocean. Amber came from Burma. Crystal came from the Himalayas. In total, 28 types of precious and semi-precious stones were used in decorating the Taj Mahal. The construction of the foundation was a major engineering challenge. The monument was being built on the banks of the Yamuna River, where the soil was soft and sandy. To create a stable foundation, workers dug deep into the earth and filled the excavation with rubble and mortar. Then they built a massive platform of brick and stone. The foundation included an ingenious feature, wooden pilings that were kept permanently submerged in water from the river. As long as the wood stayed wet, it would remain strong indefinitely. If it dried out, it would crack and weaken. This system has kept the Taj Mahal standing strong for nearly 400 years. The main dome was one of the greatest engineering achievements. It's actually a double dome, an inner dome that forms the ceiling of the interior chamber, and an outer dome that creates the magnificent profile visible from outside. The space between the two domes allowed the outer dome to be much higher and more dramatic. The four minarets were built to be freestanding, not structurally connected to the main building. Each minaret leans very slightly outward, about 2 degrees from vertical. This was deliberate. In case of an earthquake, the minarets would fall outward, away from the tomb, rather than onto it. Every aspect of the construction required extraordinary skill and precision. The pietra dura inlay work was perhaps the most painstaking task. Each flower, each leaf, each decorative element was created by carving a shallow depression in the marble and then cutting and fitting tiny pieces of colored stone into the depression. The pieces were cut so precisely that no adhesive was visible. The joints were so tight that even today, 400 years later, you cannot slide a piece of paper between the marble and the inlaid stones. A single flower might contain dozens of individual stone pieces. A single panel might take months to complete. The artisans worked with infinite patience, knowing they were creating something for eternity. The calligraphy was designed by a master calligrapher named Amanat Khan. His real name was Abdul Haq, but Shah Jahan was so impressed by his work that he gave him the honorary title Amanat Khan, trustworthy Khan. The Quranic verses are inscribed in a flowing script called thulus, and they're rendered in black marble inlaid into the white marble background. What makes the calligraphy truly ingenious is the use of optical illusion. The verses are inscribed around arched doorways and windows. The letters at the bottom of the arch are smaller, and the letters at the top are larger. But because of the viewing angle from the ground, all the letters appeared to be the same size. This required precise mathematical calculations. Amanat Khan was so proud of his work that he signed it, a rare honor for a craftsman. His signature can be found at the base of the interior dome. The jali screens, the perforated marble screens that surround the cenotaphs, were carved from single blocks of marble. They feature intricate geometric and floral patterns with hundreds of small holes cut through the marble. The precision required to create these screens without breaking the delicate marble between the holes was extraordinary. Every day, Shah Jahan would visit the construction site. He would walk among the workers. He would examine the work. He would point out flaws. He would demand corrections. He would suggest improvements. This was not just another building project for him. This was his promise to Mumtaz. This was his way of keeping her memory alive. This was his declaration to the world that his love for her would never die. The construction of the Taj Mahal took 22 years. The main mausoleum was completed around 1643, but work on the surrounding buildings, gardens, and decorative elements continued until approximately 1653. 22 years of continuous labor, 22 years of thousands of workers dedicating their skills and their sweat to this monument. 22 years of Shah Jahan's unwavering commitment to fulfilling his promise. Throughout these years, Shah Jahan would visit Mumtaz's temporary grave regularly. He would sit beside it and talk to her. He would tell her about the progress of the monument. He would describe how beautiful it was becoming. He would ask her if she would be pleased with it. He would weep. Even as the years passed, even as the monument slowly rose from the ground, even as its beauty became more and more apparent, Shah Jahan's grief never fully healed. How could it? He had lost the one person he loved most in the world. But the monument gave him purpose. It gave him a way to channel his grief into something constructive. Every stone that was placed, every flower that was inlaid, every verse that was carved, it was all a way of saying, "I love you," to Mumtaz. It was all a way of keeping her close. Finally, around 1653, the Taj Mahal was complete. When it was finished, it was unveiled to the world, and the world was stunned into silence. Nothing like it had ever existed. Nothing so beautiful had ever been created by human hands. The Taj Mahal rose from the banks of the Yamuna River like a vision from paradise. Its white marble walls seemed to glow with an inner light. Its great dome reached toward the heavens with impossible grace. Its 4 minarets stood like sentinels, guarding the most precious treasure on earth. From a distance, it appeared to float above the earth, suspended between sky and water, more like a dream than a building. Up close, the details were breathtaking. The inlaid flowers seemed to bloom from the walls. The calligraphy flowed like poetry. The jolly screens filtered light into patterns of exquisite beauty. And at the center of it all, in the quiet chamber beneath the great dome, was the cenotaph of Mumtaz Mahal. It was covered in delicate inlay work and Quranic verses. It was the heart of the Taj Mahal, the reason for everything. Shah Jahan had kept his promise. He had built for his beloved wife the most beautiful monument the world had ever seen. Shah Jahan continued to rule the Mughal Empire for several more years after the completion of the Taj Mahal. He was still a capable ruler, but he was not the same man. The joy, the energy, the passion that had once defined him were gone. He had poured all of that into the Taj Mahal. He spent more and more time at the monument. He would visit it frequently, sitting inside the chamber for hours next to Mumtaz's cenotaph. He would talk to her. He would remember their life together. As Shah Jahan grew older, his health began to decline. And with his declining health came a crisis that would lead to tragedy. Shah Jahan had 4 surviving sons, and each wanted to be the next emperor. As their father grew weaker, the rivalry between the brothers intensified. Dara Shikoh was Shah Jahan's eldest surviving son and his clear favorite. Dara was brilliant, cultured, tolerant, and philosophical. Shah Jahan loved him and wanted him to be the next emperor. But Aurangzeb, the 3rd son, was different. He was ambitious, ruthless, militarily talented, and deeply orthodox in his religious views. He believed that the empire needed a strong, devout ruler, and he believed that he was that ruler. In 1657, Shah Jahan fell seriously ill. Rumors spread that he was dying. The 4 princes immediately began preparing for war. What followed was a brutal civil war. Brother fought against brother, armies clashed, blood was spilled. Aurangzeb emerged victorious. He defeated Dara Shikoh in battle. Dara was captured, paraded through the streets in humiliation, and executed. It was one of the great tragedies of Mughal history, the murder of a gentle philosopher prince by his own brother. Shah Jahan's other sons were also defeated. Shah Shuja fled and disappeared. Murad Bakhsh was captured and executed, and Shah Jahan, the great builder, the great lover, the king of the world, was deposed and imprisoned by his own son. Aurangzeb declared himself emperor in 1658. One of his first acts was to confine his father to the Agra fort. Shah Jahan was imprisoned in the Musaman Burj, a beautiful octagonal tower in the Agra fort. It was a gilded cage. The rooms were comfortable. He was given food, servants, and medical care. But he was a prisoner. He could not leave. He could not rule. He could not do anything except wait for death. His eldest daughter, Jahanara Begum, chose to stay with him. She gave up her freedom to care for her aging, heartbroken father. For 8 years, she was his constant companion, his nurse, his comfort. But Shah Jahan's real companion was his view. From his window in the Musaman Burj, he could see across the Yamuna River to the Taj Mahal. There it was, shining in the distance, the monument he had built for Mumtaz, the physical embodiment of his love. It was close enough to see, but too far to touch. Like a memory, like a dream. For 8 long years, from 1658 to 1666, Shah Jahan sat in that tower and gazed at the Taj Mahal. He would wake at dawn and watch it turn pink in the morning light. He would sit through the day and watch it glow white in the noon sun. He would stay in the evening and watch it turn golden at sunset. And on clear nights, he would watch it shimmer silver in the moonlight. Some accounts say that in his final years, Shah Jahan's eyesight began to fail. He could no longer see the Taj Mahal clearly, so he used a diamond or a crystal as a reflective surface to catch the image of the Taj Mahal and project it onto his wall. Even when his eyes betrayed him, he found the way to keep her close. He spoke of Mumtaz constantly to Jahanara. He told stories of their life together. He remembered their wedding. He remembered their travels. He remembered her smile, her voice, her wisdom. He remembered how she had stood by him through exile and triumph. He remembered everything. He wept, often. Jahanara later wrote about her father's final years. She described his devotion to Mumtaz's memory. She described how he would pray for hours, asking God to reunite him with her in paradise. She described how his love for her mother never diminished, not even for a single moment. On January 22, 1666, Shah Jahan died in his prison chamber. He was 74 years old. He had been emperor for 30 years. He had been a prisoner for 8 years. He had been separated from Mumtaz for 35 years. According to the historical accounts, in his final moments, he was looking toward the Taj Mahal. His last gaze was directed at the monument of his love. His last thought was of Mumtaz. His body was taken from the Agra fort across the Yamuna River to the Taj Mahal. He was carried through the gates, past the gardens and reflecting pools, into the central chamber beneath the great dome. And there, he was laid to rest beside Mumtaz Mahal. After 35 years of separation, they were together again. Shah Jahan's cenotaph was placed next to Mumtaz's, on the left side. It is the only element in the entire Taj Mahal that breaks the perfect symmetry of the design. Mumtaz's cenotaph is at the exact center of the chamber. Shah Jahan's is slightly to the side. Many people see deep meaning in this asymmetry. Perhaps it shows that Shah Jahan never intended to be buried there, that he had planned a separate tomb for himself, the legendary Black Taj Mahal. Or perhaps it was simply Aurangzeb's decision to bury his father there without concern for symmetry. But some see it as perfect in its imperfection. Shah Jahan, even in death, is leaning toward Mumtaz. Even in death, he is reaching for her. Even in death, she is at the center of his world. Below the cenotaphs in the underground chamber, the actual graves are similarly arranged. 2 simple stone tombs, side by side, facing Mecca as Islamic tradition requires. Husband and wife, emperor and empress, 2 lovers reunited at last in death. The love story that began in the Meena Bazaar in 1607 ended in the Taj Mahal in 1666. But in another sense, it never ended, because the Taj Mahal still stands, and as long as it stands, their love story continues. Nearly 400 years have passed since the Taj Mahal was completed. Empires have risen and fallen. The world has changed beyond recognition. The Mughal Empire itself is long gone, but the Taj Mahal still stands. Every year, 7 to 8 million people from every corner of the world visit the Taj Mahal. They come from different countries, different cultures, different religions. They speak different languages. They have different beliefs, but they all come to see the same thing: the greatest monument to love ever created. And every single person who sees the Taj Mahal for the first time feels something that goes beyond appreciation for architecture or admiration for craftsmanship, something deeper, something more fundamental. They feel love. They feel the love that built this monument. They feel the love that inspired every stone, every flower, every curve, every line. They feel the 400-year-old love of a man for a woman who had been his everything. The Taj Mahal is proof that love is real, that love is powerful, that love can create something eternal. Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal lived and died centuries ago, but their love is still alive. It lives in the white marble that glows pink at sunrise. It lives in the reflection in the water. It lives in the flowers inlaid with precious stones. It lives in every visitor who stands before the Taj Mahal and understands, perhaps for the first time, what it really means to love someone with your whole heart. The Taj Mahal is not just a monument of the past. It is a living testament to something timeless, the power of love to transcend death, to overcome sorrow, to create beauty from grief, to make something eternal from something fleeting. As long as the Taj Mahal stands, the love story of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal will never be forgotten. And in the quiet of the night, when the tourists have gone and the gardens are empty, the Taj Mahal stands alone in the moonlight. The marble glows, the water is still, the reflection is perfect, and if you listen very carefully, you might hear it, a whisper carried on the wind across the centuries. Mumtaz. Mumtaz, Mumtaz. Forever. The end. This is the complete love story behind the Taj Mahal, a story of love that waited 5 years to begin, that lasted 19 years in life, that was separated by death for 35 years, and that has lived in marble for 400 years and counting. It is the greatest love story ever told. Not in words, but in white marble, precious stones, and the tears of a heartbroken emperor who kept his promise.